Later, in 70 AD, this was the end of the big revolt, when the Romans occupied Jerusalem and then they destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that during the time of the big revolt, many of the Jews were killed by the Romans in the battlefield. Many others actually fell into the hands of the Romans. The Romans made them to be slaves and prisoners. However, in 70 AD, actually after the Romans occupied Jerusalem, they said, every Jew that we are going to see, that's it, we are going to kill the Jews. No more hostages, no more slaves and prisoners. So in 70 AD, for the very last few Jewish zealots who revolted against the Romans and stayed alive free, the last, only safe place in this country for them was this Masada. So history tells us how in 70 AD, the last people who survived escaped from Jerusalem, and then they joined their brothers, the Sicaries, here on the top of this mountain. Josephus Flavius tells us in his book that in those days, the number of the people who lived here on top of Masada was 967 people. Ladies and gentlemen, the number 967 included men, women, and children. Remember that everything here was peaceful and quiet until the end of the year 72 AD. In the end of 72 AD, the Romans say to themselves, okay, almost 3 years ago, we defeated the Jews. But the Romans say to themselves, nowadays, we have one more problem in this country, and the name of our last problem in this country is Masada. The Romans said, nowadays in Masada, we still have another 967 zealots. The Romans asked themselves what we can do if one day these 967 zealots will leave Masada. They can go back to Jerusalem, back to Judea, back even maybe to Galilee, and then they can start another new revolt against us. This is why the Romans say to themselves, right now we have to go to Masada, we must capture Masada, we must catch these 967 zealots, and we have to kill them. This is how we will solve all of our problems here. So Josephus tells us that in the end of 72 AD, we learn about 8,000 Roman soldiers who came all the way from Jerusalem down here to Masada under the command of the very famous Roman chief commander, a man called Flavius Silva. When the 8,000 Roman soldiers came here, they brought with them another 5,000 Jewish slaves. When the Romans came here, when they saw how high was the mountain, when they saw how narrow and steep was the snake path, when they saw how high and strong was the wall, they say to themselves, there is no chance to capture this place. They say to themselves, there is no way how we can climb up the snake path. And even the Romans say to themselves, if somehow we can climb up the snake path, there is no way how we can knock down the wall, enter Masada, catch the zealots and kill them. This is why in the very beginning the Romans decided to put Masada under a siege. History tells us that down at the bottom, around this mountain, the Romans built 8 camps, and then they connected the 8 camps with a siege wall. This is how they put Masada under a siege, and then the Romans said, right now we will wait until the zealots up there will run out of water and food, then they will have to give themselves into our hands, and then we will kill them. But ladies and gentlemen, Josephus tells us in his book that the Romans' siege even did not bother the zealots. Josephus tells us that the people who lived here had enough water and enough food so they could live 3 more years under a siege. However, on the other hand, the Romans who lived down there, they had big problems and difficulties with their water and food supply. So this is why, after 4 months of siege, when the Romans realized that the siege did not bother the zealots, they decided to capture Masada by force. Ladies and gentlemen, how did they do it? Right now, please follow me. We make our way to the western side of the mountain.